We did a census in 2020. Turns out all the American Community Survey data wrong. We gained population in the state of Illinois in the census of 2020. So now what am I supposed to say? Every year the Republicans, the right wing, cites the American Community Survey data. You just cited some from last year that says that we're losing population when the reality is that we didn't over the last 10 years when the American Community Survey said we did.
Right, and you know we see that. I mean, the IRS tracks this data, right? You can go to their website or whatever. You can get the data, and you can see the outmigration of billions of dollars of adjusted gross income. These facts are facts; they're true. You know, the governor says, "Well, you know, this isn't happening," and then he starts making excuses. And then he says, well, it's happening to everybody. Well, it's not happening to everybody. And whether it's the winters or the summers or whatever it is, it's really bad policy making. Our border states are not suffering to the extent that Illinois is. And
it's State Representative Brad Halbrook after Governor J.B. Pritzker reacting to population numbers that again show a decade of decline in the state of Illinois. 10 years of population losses. Welcome back, Bishop on Air. Follow me anywhere, just search Bishop on Air. Full-time gig has me as associate editor for the Center Square, and if you go and check out the Center Square's website, where you can see the work I do, but also the work my colleagues do, you can stay up to date with some of the latest. But yesterday, numbers from the U.S. Census came out and shows a decade of decline in population, and some legislators looking for a change. So we've seen this story before, right? I mean, for year after year after year. And if you look at the numbers that were released Tuesday by the U.S. Census Bureau, it shows that, it's the 10th year of annual losses. It started after 2013 when the state gained 12,700 people. But the following year, the decline began. That decade of decline began. 2014, state lost an estimated 10,000 people. 2015, that more than doubled to 25,000 people. Another year, 37,900 in 2016. The loss trend continued. 2017, 41,800 fewer people. 2018, 55,200 fewer people. 57,700 fewer in 2019, escalating again, 79,500 fewer in 2020, 100,000 fewer in 2021, and more than 207,000 fewer in 2022. For 2023, the U.S. Census shows that Illinois lost an additional 32,800 for the year ending in July 1st of 2023. So if you add all of that up, that is 549,000 fewer Illinoisans in the state that left. And these numbers, of course, take into consideration inbound migration, outbound migration, international migration, births, and deaths. When you take all of those combined, the net loss is what we're looking at here in those numbers. So, of course, there's some interesting things, and the question is, why are people moving? But also, why do some people seem to deny that's happening? Governor J.B. Pritzker earlier this year did just that when he was asked by a student at a college talk about, how can the state reverse this trend and keep businesses in Illinois that are being hit by high taxes. Here's the governor's response to that question at the Harvard Kennedy School in a politics conversation he had with students.
Well, let me contend that the data that you just cited is wrong. Let me talk about population in the state of Illinois. So for year after year after year, the American Community Survey, which is literally like a poll, a survey that gets done in between the 10-year census that gets done, showed that Illinois was losing population, 100,000 a year, every year, year in, year out, or more. And I believed it. And I campaigned in part on making sure that we are addressing the outmigration from the state of Illinois. One of the important things to do, which I have done, is make college more affordable, because it turns out that the plurality of people who are leaving are people who couldn't afford to go to college in the state of Illinois. Let's make it affordable. Let's keep our smartest, best, kids, or smartest kids in the state in Illinois. So I've effectuated that. Meanwhile, we did a census, in 2020. Turns out all the American Community Survey data, wrong. We gained population in the state of Illinois in the census of 2020. So now what am I supposed to say? Every year the Republicans, the right wing, cites the American Community Survey data. You just cited some from last year that says that we're losing population when the reality is that we didn't over the last 10 years when the American Community Survey said we did. So I would just say our economy has grown from $800 million to over $1 trillion in the last couple of years. We have jobs available. In fact, we have about 85,000 more jobs available in the state of Illinois right now than we have, people who can fill those jobs. Now, you might say it's because people left. I would tell you because we have a lot of people who retired early, and that's what the data shows.
And again, and the governor goes on to give some more examples of why he thinks that the state's not shrinking. But some quick facts here. The state lost a congressman because of the lost population and reapportionment after 2020. And you look at the U.S. Census website for Illinois, and it shows that Illinois did indeed lose people over the past 3 years from 12.8 million to 12.5 million, and even down to 12.54 million in the most recent annual estimates. But that's not the only thing. I talked with State Representative Brad Halbrook yesterday, and he talked about how, this denial, it's not really helping anything because it's not just the census data, it's a whole bunch of other data as well.
Right. And we see that, the IRS tracks this data, right? You can go to their website or whatever, you can get the data and you can see the outmigration of billions of dollars of adjusted gross income. These facts are facts. They're true. But I think what's kind of maybe masked or covered that up over the last couple of years has been the billions of dollars that have rolled into the state of Illinois at multiple levels of federal coronavirus dollars. And so that's kind of masked the thing. It's maybe put a false sense of an economic upturn. So we've seen an increase in revenues coming into Springfield. So, they say, well, hey, there's nothing to see here. Move along because the Treasury's doing well. Well, that's going to come to an end at some point in time. Of course, part of it too is inflation, and so that's causing an uptick, as far as revenues coming into the state of Illinois. But eventually, there's going to be a payday here, and things are going to change. I don't know what it's going to take for a change, but we have elections every 2 years, so maybe there'll be a shift in legislators coming this spring with the primary and next fall with the general. Things can change fairly quickly, but it's going to take a dramatic shift at the ballot box.
We'll hear more from Representative Halbrook about what exactly his thoughts are concerning the population loss. But Halbrook was among some Republicans that have been looking at these numbers each and every year in Illinois and saying something needs to be changed. As we heard, Governor J.B. Pritzker seeming to deny that, saying that the numbers are wrong. Even Democrats going to, essentially deal with the issue with Congress sending letters to the U.S. Census. We'll hear a little bit more of that from Senator Dick Durbin from this past, not this past state fair, but the state fair last year. So we'll hear about that. But I talked with Chicago Democratic State Representative Shawn yesterday about all of this. And again, it's not just the past 3 years that the state has lost, 300,000+ people. The state's leading the country for its rate, and especially the neighboring states, the rate of population decline. Other states are actually, in the past year, every state around us had increased population percentage-wise by at least, I think, 0.2%. I want to say one of the states, maybe it was Indiana, maybe it was Kentucky, had a population increase of 0.4%. I'll just look at my story, pull it back up. And again, you can find this information. Just follow me, Bishop on Air, on X, and you can get those regular updates. But also follow thecentersquare.com because on a percentage basis, as we report breaking down the numbers, Iowa gained 0.2%, Kentucky, Missouri, and Wisconsin up 0.3%, Indiana was up 4%, Illinois down by 3%. So that's the third worst percentage decline in the country. So the state's losing people, leading the state, leading the country, and losing people. I brought that to the State Representative Shawn to get his thoughts on why this is happening at this rate and how it could possibly be reversed.
Well, let's go to how do we reverse the trend It all boils down to making sure that Illinois has the highest um, level of education from birth through college. That's going to always drive people to a state. And it also will drive businesses to our state if we have a strong and educated workforce where people or businesses could actually have a pipeline for employment. That's ideal. Of course, we also have to look at making sure that the tax policies, you have to make sure that you have a fair tax in a state where you're expecting for people to stay. You can't overtax and put tax burdens on working class families. That's always going to drive people away. And then you look at property taxes. We're competing with border states that don't have the same level of tax levies as Illinois. And then, Bishop, you also have to take into consideration that there's still an undercount of people that's this engaged. So therefore, the numbers may not be totally accurate because people are not taking the census. You also have to take into consideration that there are a number of people that have decided to change their home address and register their residency in another state for the tax purposes, but actually still live here. So I think that Illinois is by far the best state to live in, especially during the summer and spring months for people that like that weather. And so I think we have great transportation, we have great airports, we have great public universities. So I think that we just have to do everything we can to bring people back and to keep people here.
And again, we'll hear more from State Representative LaShawn Ford in reaction to what also I got from Republican State Representative Brad Halbrook. As Ford says, yeah, we need to continue education funding, but we also need to address some of the tax issues. And he really leaned into the property tax issue, which Illinois, every year, it's either second or third highest property taxes, depending on which kind of, chart or, analysis you're going to review. But Brad Halbrook addressing the question of what about, is it the weather? Because we hear that as well. I remember getting that excuse for the first 3 or 4 years of population decline, annual decline. Now we're in a decade of decline. But I remember hearing from Democratic leaders, it's people retire and moving to Florida, and they're moving to the Southwest because it's warmer, and but there's a whole host of other issues behind why people are moving. And Brad Halbrook spells out some of those other reasons why he thinks people are moving.
Right. Well, I've often kidded about Illinois as the greatest economic development tool a neighboring state or a southern state can have, because you see the out-migration numbers that have been going on for years, and you see the in-migrations in these other states, whether it's our border states. Our border states are not suffering to the extent that Illinois is. And in the southern states, when you travel to southern states, many of them no income tax. Real estate taxes are dramatically lower, and yet they have good roads, bridges, schools, police, fire, all these things that is important to having a high quality of life. These states all have them. So, the governor says, well, this isn't happening. And then he starts making excuses. And then he says, well, it's happening to everybody. Well, it's not happening to everybody. And whether it's the winters or the summers or whatever it is, it's really bad policymaking. I mean, the countdown to confiscation as far as a person's personal firearms is well underway. We're just a couple of weeks away from the full implementation of the gun ban and registry. That's yet another reason people leave the state. There's just countless reasons. And so the governor and his administration need to figure this out. The majority party needs to figure this out. and implement some changes in some of the policy that they are getting done, policy making they're trying to do.
Again, that's State Representative Brad Halbrook. I did ask Representative LaShawn Ford about the idea of it's not just the economic things, right? Because Ford did talk about taxes and property taxes and needs to address those things. But I asked him about the politics of the state. And we've got some of the strictest gun laws, got the magazine ban and the gun ban and the registry that kicks in less than 2 weeks. You've got other things that more conservative individuals don't appreciate, like lax abortion laws, down to even getting rid of parental notification of minor girls getting abortions. Parents don't have to be notified that that's happening in the state of Illinois anymore. So you've got that in the mix, and all of the different other social issues up and down the spectrum that people argue and debate about over time. LaShawn Ford doesn't really see that the politics of things necessarily being a reason why people are leaving.
I think that when you talk about giving the rights to women to choose, it makes Illinois a desirable state where people will move to. So I think that people are not leaving Illinois because Illinois is a pro-choice state. It's actually, with the Roe versus Wade, it actually brings people and makes Illinois more desirable for women and men that support a woman's choice. And when you talk about guns, I think that there's a small impact that our gun legislation have on the Second Amendment. We have what you call some of the strictest gun policies in Illinois, but it still doesn't take away a person's right to have guns. We just recently passed the bill, and the Supreme Court at the highest level decided not to strike it down because it's the right thing to do. And the gun policy is not a factor that's going to drive people out of Illinois. I think people will find a way to register their guns in Indiana, but they're not going to uproot themselves and move because they have to register their guns. That's just not going to happen. There's more in Illinois that they love. And I think that gun policies are concerning, but I don't think it outweighs the benefits of being a resident of Illinois.
So again, that's State Representative Shawn Ford's take. The conversation I had with him yesterday, responding to some of what State Representative Brad Halbrook had to say, especially about, like, for instance, the gun and magazine ban. And in particular, I mean, just looking at comments here, one guy commenting that he's moving out of Illinois next year. Reason? Property taxes, gun laws, crime rates, and the cold. So the weather's low on that list. But what the representative had to say, too, about the highest court in the land, I don't know if he was talking about the Illinois Supreme Court, which did side with the state, or if he's talking about the U.S. Supreme Court not willing to strike it down. This thing's still being litigated when it comes to the gun ban, but we'll talk about that some more here soon. If you recall, last year, I've been tracking this issue for a while because, again, we're in a decade of declined population in the state of Illinois. You had Democrats send the U.S. Census letters saying, hey, reverse the trend. We're actually gaining population. That has not happened. And if you look at, again, the U.S. Census Bureau website, it shows that indeed the state has lost population from 12.8 to 12.5, and it continues to lose. So I asked Senator Dick Durbin last year, who is one of the signatories of the letter to the U.S. Census, what are they looking for? Why do they think that the state's gaining population?
We lost population according to the decennial census, but we had that post-enumeration survey that said there was a possible 2% or so change, but the census hasn't changed. What's the latest on that?
I haven't received a reply yet.
Why is that important?
Well, it means federal dollars coming back home. The greater the population, the more federal dollars returned to us. I want to help the taxpayers get their money back. I think we gained population. You know, the Tribune's going to disagree with me because they got their own editorial policy, but the numbers speak for themselves.
So Durbin says that, hey, the numbers speak for themselves. And again, looking at the U.S. Census, despite those letters from Democrats in Illinois asking for the numbers to be revised upwards, we continue to lose population. So I asked LaShawn Ford the question of how do we address this denial within the Democrat leadership, especially after a decade of decline in the state of Illinois. Here's LaShawn Ford.
You know, if we support the census, then we have to accept the verdict. And so I think that we have to, just like any team, they have to play against the refs to win. We have to play against the undercount and make sure that we increase the population in our state to make up for the undercount. And we're doing a poor job of that. I think that as the governor and the mayor of the city of Chicago, I think that their job is to look at our competitors. I think the governor should be looking at our border states, and he should be treating this like a business and be very competitive as relates to policies that compare to our border states. I think that would be very helpful to understand what our competition looks like and what's driving people to the receiving states. So, I mean, we should definitely know where we're losing our people to. Where are people going? And what's the age of that population? Maybe it's senior citizens and they're leaving to go to Florida or Arizona or places where it's warmer, and they move to retirement states. That could very well be the case. But we need to know who the people are that's leaving, and really have our very own census count as a state so that we know what we really have.
So we'll see what happens next year. Now, again, the rate of decline seems to have eased a little bit from 100,000 plus last year to about 34,000 or something this year. But clearly, this is an issue that's maybe slowing down. I don't know. I did put a request in from the governor's office for comment and did not get anything back. So, yeah, we'll watch that closely. Follow along, Bishop on Air, anywhere. X, Facebook, YouTube. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to also check out the store below. If you like what you see and want to support the program, you can do that. Appreciate you guys hanging out. And always like, subscribe, and follow along with Bishop on Air.